So this week's update comes already unpackaged, mostly because of this. Because, One Piece is a high priority watch from my Friday friend. And, as you can see, it's already been opened, but it's already been watched. There's really not much to show about it. It's pretty much standard fare for what One Piece releases have looked like for the past, I don't know, many number of reviews. But we do have other ones. We do have Kamikatsu. What was the exact? Working for God in the Godless world. And this show is definitely an interesting one. It's probably not one that most people who, a lot of people might watch. I see regions A and B. I'm trying to remember the episodes, bonus, audio. There's English. So there's English dub and French. Sacre bleu. In German. Anyways, this anime kind of fails the 3-episode test because it's really hard to tell if you will actually appreciate it based on 3 episodes, because it's hard to tell even what it is. But it had some pretty crazy stuff. Some of it was bad, but I think it was intentionally bad, and it's quite hilarious. The rotoscoped tractor scene being one in particular. What do they have back here? People. I guess they didn't have it, but it makes sense. Oh, actually. I don't know, it feels like we haven't had something that's like shiny like that. That's interesting. It looks like those are the little video game sprite versions of a lot of the characters. How did it end? I remember some of the stuff there. I don't remember if that ended. Oh well, probably the real big thing this week is Mob Psycho 100 Season 3. This is a limited edition version, I believe. If you're curious where Tokyo Mew Mew New is, that shipped and arrives tomorrow. I think tomorrow. So, it's a little delayed, but sometimes that's the nature of things. Let's see. This is also Regions A and B with English dub. And that's that thing. So let's take a look, because there's definitely some shininess to that. That's neat. Season 3, episodes 26 through 37. Does that add up? Well, it means that the previous one, episode 25, so you had 12 and 13 episodes for seasons 1 and 2. Maybe not respectively, I don't know which was which. So this one has 12 episodes. So it could be like 13 then 12 and 12. Oh dear, that's a lot of discs. Ooh, people. But let's see, can we establish that's the Blu-ray symbol? So this is Blu-ray disc 1, and this should be Blu-ray disc 2, and then DVD disc 1. And DVD disc 2. So the volume 1s and volumes 2s all have the same art, or discs 1 and 2 have the same art. Okay. And we've got this. Art cards. Sticker sheet. Spirits and Such Consultation Office. Okay. So this is the keychain. It's a bit hard to see, but if I knew the anime better, I could say for certain. These are the stickers. Interesting. And here's the art cards. And let's go ahead and open this up, because it's not like we have a lot of other stuff. I mean, we've got the art book there, but you know what? We're just looking at these to look at all the season 3 stuff. This is the one character that doesn't immediately ring a bell. Alright, and then we can put all these back in here. The only question is, this is just all season 3, right? I guess I'm reading that. And yeah, so it's not like a season 3 part 1 and this, or season 3 part 2 and I bought a part 1 and I forgot that I bought the part 1 and something like that. Now let's take a quick look at this art book. You know, do that really quick. You know, I kind of don't want to stare too much at it. Just kind of get the rough idea, but yeah. Here's this week's physical anime collection update. Alright, to begin with, you know, it's definitely weird. I know a lot of you are like, why don't you watch a lot of the stuff you get on Blu-ray DVD? I do at least watch One Piece stuff when it comes out, and my friend and I prioritized watching it, even though I was watching it very exhausted and with a headache, but content-wise, I do like what it's doing. It just is unfortunate that it feels like it drags. So, I think it kind of balances out to okay, I think. But, you know, the entire contents of this one, cool stuff. You know, like, I guess they revealed, oh, this character has this power, and it was really neat. But it, again, spent a lot of time sort of just sitting there on it. They've also established that the story is flowing a certain way in terms of that engagement, but they were doing it for the entirety of this thing, which just feels slow and stuff. And so, you know, it's a strange mix. I'm definitely curious to see where it's going to end, but at the same time, and, you know, I extra feel the exhaustion when I can't keep my eyes open to stare at it, but it's okay because what's going on usually doesn't require you to stare at the screen for long periods of time, but I don't know. Okay stuff. I like what the season's doing again. Stuff I watched, so I didn't watch the latest episode of Unnamed Memory. This was a particularly exhausting week. You know, part of the problem is, you know, I watched One Piece with my Friday friend, which, as you can guess, is something I do on Friday. But, as you can tell from the way I described it, my Friday was very exhausting. When he left, I went to bed. Well, technically, I took a nap in the bath for like an hour or two. And then I woke up. I think I grabbed a quick bite and then went back to bed another hour, or an hour later for 10 hours or so. Maybe 11. So, very exhausted. It's like, oh, okay, well, maybe you have enough energy to do stuff over the weekend, but I guess, let's see, I did have time to play Dead by Daylight. Not time, energy to play Dead by Daylight. But then Sunday, with it being Mother's Day and the way I had to schedule some of that stuff, basically I was kind of limping through the weekend to a certain degree. And this mostly means that, you know, a couple of the anime, they're like, oh, maybe I'll catch up on this. Oh, maybe I'll catch up on this. Well, Unnamed Memory I didn't catch up on. And it may be surprised because that's the only Tuesday anime I watch. But the truth of the matter, with the recording of this video and with Tuesday usually involving playing video games with my brother, I usually just don't have energy. Hence why Unnamed Memory just kind of fluttered a bit, I guess. I suppose most of the issues, what I mentioned, I think I mentioned this about episode 4 when I watched it, that it's introducing interesting ideas, but I don't know if it feels like they are thematically in line with what the show set up. And it's not necessarily bad, But I guess I would just say that the show's failing to keep me caught, so to speak. Well, it isn't the only show I missed, but let's just go down the list. Konosuba, Season 3, Episode 5. What happened in this episode? What happened in this episode? There was definitely a couple of amusing parts. You know, every episode's been a couple of amusing, even if I haven't remembered them when I've reviewed them, but I do remember at least a couple of them for this one. I guess it handled that concept in a way that was more amusing and less why. You know, usually I cringe when anime do this sort of thing, but surprisingly Konosuba handled it very well. Yeah, entertaining enough. Mysterious Disappearances, Episode 5. I think they more officially set up something for the next episode, which the previous episode, it kind of felt that way, and you know, it's kind of okay. I think it's still managing to keep my attention and keep me interested. But yeah, you know, I guess it's mostly only okay. And if there's anything about this show that's maybe going to make people not care about as much long term, it would probably be because I guess I guess the mysterious part of it is a little spaced out, but our main character did do that, and that was, yeah, again, an interesting thing it did at the very end there. And Archdemon's Dilemma, Episode 7. I did not expect the show to do that, and it did it pretty well, and it was very heartwarming and almost a little teary watching it. It was quite touching. The show, I think, is doing a really good job of setting us up with a premise that we've definitely seen before and think we can predict how it's going to be, but then experiencing that this show is doing just a good job of staying on top of the ideas and keeping it interesting in ways that are thematically right, but just don't feel like they've been done before, I guess. So, good show. Salad Bowl of Eccentrics, Episode 6. Not sure what I have to really say about this one. I guess the show, it feels strange, and it's amusing stuff, but it does feel kind of pointless. Like, it's not necessarily giving me stuff that I'm like, okay, this is kind of interesting or quirky or silly. It just sort of is, which is not a really good premise for a show where it's like, okay, yeah. It rises ever so slightly above that, I think, and so it's not like anybody who watches it's like, what, do you just like boring anime? I think that would be a dumb thing to say, but it is fair to say that I'm sometimes not sure if I'm going to continue watching episodes of that one. So that one was at a risk, but I watched episode 6 and enjoyed it. Delicious in Dungeon, episode 19. I think it's continuing to be an entertaining series. We got more stuff that happened that's interesting because they do manage to keep the interactions that our characters make happening. And now I think about it, now this episode have happened, and Jesus Christ did a lot of art of one of the characters in a certain situation start showing up. Holy shit. But, you know, outside of that, let's see. Oh yeah, they did do that. It was entertaining stuff that was giving our characters information, and us, the audience, as well, that kind of is doing a good job of building up what does the end of this show want to do? What's it going to mean? What is involved in doing that? And it's continuing to be clever as everywhere it goes. So, good stuff. Reincarnated as a Slime, Season 3, Episode 54. For whatever reason, this show is spending a lot of time setting things up. It's another setting things up episode. Maybe I didn't watch season 2 episodic, so maybe I don't feel like season 2 was as much setting stuff up. And this is not to be confused with building stuff up, which the show has been really good at. And there's been little bits and pieces there, but I guess it wasn't a bad episode, but it just felt like it was a lot of that with the, a little bit of the hints of that good flavor of reincarnated as a slime. But I guess it might mean that season 3 is one that might be better watched in bulk. The Misfit of Demon King Academy. This says season 2, episode 17. I'm trying to think if it was actually episode 18, whichever one it was, the latest one. Entertaining. That was a new thing that they revealed. That story that they continued to do, that's kind of like, I guess I like how that's working out, and I like how it's doing. It's a show that kind of has an element of upliftingness to it, as well as absurdity, and it continues to do both of those pretty well, I think. Even here in season 2. The Irregular Magic High School, season 3, episode 6. I kind of didn't like this episode. It wasn't necessarily a bad episode, but it might have been a pointless episode somewhat. It feels like we did get a couple of things from it that are like, okay, I guess that's sort of thing, but for the most part this episode didn't reveal anything new to us, the viewer, and it was really about multiple different people learning what us, the viewers, already knew, which is kind of bad storytelling. You can get away with it sometimes, but I feel like this isn't the only episode in this season that's kind of done that. And so that's really quite unfortunate. It's not necessarily bad, but it is kind of Let me see. I skipped the next episode of Studio Apartment, Good Lighting, Angel Included. I think, as I mentioned, this show, while it has some interesting stuff it's doing, it's also not necessarily doing anything in too new a way. So I guess, unless the next episode had jumped out and said, oh yes, now I have an idea of what it may be trying to do, and I guess I really want to see that, it was more like, I don't know. I kept putting it off. Train to the End of the World, episode 6. I guess it's an okay episode. It's interesting because I felt like the characters talking, while there was a little bit of, okay, all the characters are just sort of talking, that problem that I've sort of felt in earlier episodes, I did feel like it was a bit there this time, but it felt like the talking wasn't just kind of arbitrary. It did feel like it was topical, but the characters just kind of talking a little bit. And I don't mean this as like, oh yes, it's interesting dialogue. It just, like, the problem before is it almost felt like they took the voice actresses and they gave them these roles, and it was just about, the voice actresses kind of talking but playing these silly roles, which, can be fine. I think there's other anime like that, and they don't tend to grab my attention. But Train to the End of the World hasn't quite been that, and since it just kind of had slivers of that felt in there, but it keeps having events happen, and it's developing things that are interesting and relevant to what has felt like the entire premise of the show. Which is, it talks about the 7G incident, but we've been able to really tell from episode 1 that fundamentally it's about the main character's relationship with the girl that we saw in Ikebukuro. So I'm glad it continues to be that way. Yeah, and I guess it's not on the fallen off the radar list. It's still doing interesting things. It was still in the middle of something interesting that it was doing. So it's staying interesting. God's Games We Play, episode 6. And I should mention that, as usual, this anime and the one before it are not the latest episodes, because the latest episodes came out today, this day that I'm recording this, but because so many things come out on Monday that I'm watching, those two things get pushed back a little bit because the other stuff is a little bit closer to what I would normally prioritize. But God's Game We Play, episode 6, it was okay. I think my main problem with it is it is something sort of like an episode that would be like, oh, Tournament Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or, some sort of card gamey sort of thing. But the problem is the animes for these things don't really feel like they reflect tournaments in real life, and it really is just like, oh yeah, look at these characters and how lucky everybody got with RNG. So it just sort of feels like less of their efforts shown and more that the RNG just happened to be absolutely perfect for everybody to try strategies that just played out in a specific way. And I guess, some of that could be just overthinking of it, but it does mean it didn't work for me. It wasn't a bad episode, but while it had interesting things that happened, it wasn't as exciting, I guess, because it sort of felt like, I guess it could just pull whatever it wanted out. And it did a Chekhov's gun, so it did introduce something and intentionally fire it off in a good way. So it's not necessarily bad, but it's just not effective because ultimately it felt like the stakes couldn't feel real to me, because it should be something for which RNG would be a much bigger thing. And I don't know, I guess the character just got to be followed along by a story. It's just like, whatever. Kaiju number 8, episode 5. So if episode 3 was kind of the weakest episode, I think that continues to be the case, because episode 5 was actually quite neat with a couple of nice follow-up moments from the previous episode, set up by the previous episode, not just like direct sequel sort of stuff, but just sort of like, yeah, these are nice interactions. Our main character is still getting some of those, maybe you could call them emasculation moments, but they feel better executed this time, and with a lot better payout. So maybe episode 3 just kind of had too high of a concentration of them or something like that. But very fun episode. Definitely curious to see what's happening in episode 6, because they set it up to say, okay, what are they going to be doing this? Newgate, episode 5. It's okay. Let's scroll this down to reveal the rest of the stuff. I'm trying to think if I've got anything to really say. There's some interesting stuff going on in there. Although there's some things where it's like, okay, that character knew that, but why would he know that? I think the real problem is mostly just the way he said that thing is as if, he was around 500 years prior when he wouldn't be. And maybe that's just an execution offness, but not necessarily bad. I'm trying to think. I guess it was just an okay episode. Yeah. It's a bit there. I guess it's okay, yeah. Let me see. Reincarnated Aristocrat. It was an okay episode 6. I think establishing, I guess, a bit of a down point for our main character and good continuation of the building of the world. And not necessarily the building of the party that the episode is mostly, or the series has mostly been about up to this point. So, decent enough stuff. Jobless Reincarnation, Season 2, Episode 18. So this episode, I was kind of holding my breath for it, because I'm like, oh no, that's not a good name for an episode. Because the last time I saw a name like that, I got traumatized. A little bit. But no, I guess it's definitely setting things up, and I'm definitely curious to see where it's going to go, because up till now, most of Season 2 has definitely been, our main character just kind of having a fun, homely time. But they do seem to be setting things up so that, I don't know, I'm definitely to some degree dreading what may be about to happen in a good way. So, yeah, looking forward to it. Tsukimichi, Season 2, Episode 19. They really are just sort of, the pacing just definitely feels a little strange. Some of it works because, our main characters are really quite overpowered compared to everybody else, and they're just doing their thing. And I felt for some reason this episode was entertaining slightly more so than maybe the previous handful. Although I am still not sure what it's setting itself up for, but I guess potential big things coming up. Seventh Prince, episode 7. Fun episode. Like I said, one of the things that makes this show shine is when we see our main character kind of go into his little psychopath mode, and yeah, they're like, here you go. We're handing this out like candy, I guess. And I thought it was well done in that regard, and it was quite fun. It's like, oh yes, these aren't the same things he's done. It's like, And in his psychopathy, he seems to be getting more brazen in non-destructive ways, but in entertaining ways. So, I think a fun episode. Monster, episode 7. It was okay, I guess. I think the previous episode had some fighting stuff. This one has more of it. And it's okay. But I guess I'm not exactly sure what I want to see the show do and why it maybe feels like it's not quite living up. It's entertaining. It's also really easily the first thing I watch on a Monday when I get home, because Mondays are my grocery day, and while I'm unloading groceries I can put the dubbed anime on. And, it's a decent enough show. It's not like bad or anything, but there's something that I guess I wanted to have that it doesn't for some reason. I can't think what. Spice and Wolf, Merchant Meets the Wise Wolf, episode 7. Once again, this is the last thing I watch on a Monday before I record these videos, and it's just nice and pleasant to watch. I don't remember the story beats too perfectly from the first one, but it's probably following them episode by episode, probably in the same way, just reanimating, redubbing, and it's all just so nice to watch. It's very pleasant. I do appreciate it. And then we have Chillin' in Another World with Level 2 Super Cheat Powers, episode 6. Which, interestingly enough, this is our main character gets mad episode. But I kind of felt that one. Mostly because I was completely mad by separate stories about tow truck companies. It's just like, I think there's a good point there, but there's also a point where it's just like, I get really angry at the people who say, oh, they didn't commit a crime. It's like, no, they committed a crime. The second the owner admitted, oh yes, we towed the car and we should not have, but we're still going to charge you money. At that point, I think that's criminal no matter what these fuckers say. Because at that point, the company is basically admitting, oh, we did something wrong, but we're going to continue holding on to your car until you pay us money. At that point, it becomes theft. I don't think licenses can or should have anything to do with it. Especially if you're going to try to argue, well, the government gave them. Well, too fucking bad. The Constitution says they can't do that. So, I was really agitated and pissed off by just the story. And who knows, it could have been fake. But, really pissed off because, yeah. And this episode, I kind of felt that anger too, because I was still feeling it then. But I'd say the episode overall was quite nice. There was some satisfaction to that and the events that happened, and it's follow-up to that stuff, and it kind of saying, okay, this show isn't just, okay, convenient guys conveniently in another world, and oh, hey, there's women. It's wanting to establish a relationship, and there's some things about them where I'm like, okay, she says that. But what if he did do that, and he was weak on the other end, but she wasn't? Would she still respect him? And one of the things that's nice about the show is I kind of feel like she would. Like, the main character and her are definitely showing to be really respectable. Princesses too, but she was definitely set up in order to be surrounded by asshats and to be the voice of reason that people ignored. And I'm definitely interested to see, because they haven't quite shown what's going to happen when the two of them meet, but I kind of want to see, because that's interesting drama, I guess. Whereas right now it's just been actually kind of heartwarming, and I thought a pretty good episode. Let's see. Is there anything else to really talk about? I guess tomorrow Dead by Daylight PTB shows, and there's been a lot of advertisements suggesting that it's Dungeons and Dragons, and people pointing out that some of the advertisement materials
highly suggest that'll be Vecna. And for those of you who are Stranger Things fans, you may be thinking, oh, the character from Stranger Things. And most of us are thinking that doesn't sound like the case, mostly because they're advertising it as a D&D thing. And Vecna from Stranger Things was named after Vecna from Dungeons and Dragons. But they've been clearly, showing Dungeons and Dragons, these sort of things. So, I guess it'll be interesting to see what happens. That's why somebody was mentioning that behavior sometimes brings in licenses in surprising ways. And an example of this would be Ghostface. Because Ghostface, the character from the Scream movies, they don't have that in Dead by Daylight. What they instead got was the rights to the Ghostface mask, which is owned by the Spirit Halloween company, separate from those movies, and then they created their own custom character based off of it. And I think there's some thought that maybe they're doing something similar here, where they're introducing Dungeons and Dragons, and they're introducing a character named Vecna, so that people can have a character named Vecna, but it's not going to be the same Vecna that we know from Stranger Things, which should be fine. But it will make people kind of happy that they have Demogorgon and Vecna, and yay, happy thoughts. And, I'm definitely curious myself. But I don't know that I'll be curious enough to explore it a whole lot. I'm just mostly, I guess, trying to do little things in the game here and there to mostly be prepared for when that comes out, I guess. But otherwise, I'm mostly exhausted. Oh, I guess I also played Pokemon to get the mightiest Primarina. Fortunately, I sat around and kind of pondered, and I didn't think I had the energy to try it, but then I'm like, I guess maybe I feel like I can try this strategy, and I'll just do that. That sounds easy enough, and I did it, and it was nice and easy. And now I know an even better support Pokemon would probably be Hatrina. Yeah, but, oh well. Too late. I mean, I could go back and fight it again, but I just don't have the energy to try to do that, to care to do that. Just so tired. Probably that means I should end things now. Y'all, have a nice week.